It's Hannaford's, this is our fourth Facebook Live presentation for 2020. My name is Scott Williams, and my partner on the other side of me is Talia. She's our conveyancer and also my right arm as far as our conveyancing in Donno's Hannaford go. The topic for this afternoon's Facebook Live presentation is specifically for first-time buyers and the grants and schemes that are available for first-time buyers in New South Wales at the moment. It's been a very, very busy year as far as conveyancing goes in this area. We've had probably our best year for many years, and it's been a tough year. I think many first-time buyers will agree that it's been a tough year for them to get their foot in the door. But the government has made life a little bit easier for first-time buyers, especially since from when I was a first-time buyer, there was no assistance out there. These days, there's a little bit of assistance for first-time buyers. I'll go through the what they are, sort of in a summary form, and then I'll let Talia discuss the first home grant, and then I'll discuss the first home owners grant scheme. So as far as your first home buyers are concerned, you've really got two schemes or two assistances that the government's providing. The first of those is the first home owners grant scheme. Now, that's a scheme that a first home buyer can use. They apply for it at the time after they've exchanged contracts, and if they're eligible, then it means that they don't have to pay the stamp duty that's normally applicable to a purchase. There are some guidelines and there are some eligibility criteria that apply with both the grant and the scheme. As far as the homeowner grant scheme is concerned, if you're buying, it applies to both a pre-existing home. It also applies to a new home. So there's no differentiation there. As long as you're a first home buyer, whether you're buying a new home or a pre-existing home, you may still apply for the exemptions from the stamp duty. If it's a new home, then it's got to be worth less than $600,000. And if you're building a new home, then the combined land and home value cannot exceed $750,000. To also qualify for the grant, you and your spouse, or you and your spouse, must not have previously owned or co-owned a property in Australia. If you look at the cost savings involved in not paying stamp duty, just say for a property worth $550,000, which is less than the average house in Port Macquarie these days. But for a house of $550,000, the stamp duty is a little bit over $20,000. So there's a substantial saving for a purchaser without paying the stamp duty that goes along with the transaction. So I'll now hand over to Talia, and she can go through the first homeowner grant, what it is and what you need to, or how you need to apply for that, and what eligibility criteria there are. Thanks, T.
Thanks. So for the first homeowners grant, this grant applies only to buying or building a new home. You can make a claim if your home's newly constructed and has a value of less than $600,000, and the land and house build combined is less than $750,000. You can apply for this grant when you arrange finance to buy your new home. Again, to be eligible, you or your spouse can have never owned or co-owned a property. You cannot have received a grant in Australia for this particular grant. Be over 18, the person you're buying with must be an Australian citizen or yourself, and you cannot be a company or a trust. So this one's just, again, for buying or building a new home. In connection with new homes, there's also the Home Builder Program, which is a $25,000 grant. To be eligible, you had to sign a contract between the 4th of June and the 31st of December, and you had to commence building within 3 months of the date of this contract. And this one is due to end 31 December, so if you're looking to take advantage of this, you haven't got long to jump on it.
Great, thanks for that, T. Now, there's a couple of questions that we normally get asked by purchasers, and I guess the main one is, how do I apply for the first homeowner grant? And then the second question comes, when do I get the money? It's the easiest way to apply for the grant is through your financer. So if you're going through a bank or a mortgage broker, then you make it known to them that you are eligible for the first homeowner grant, and they will process the application for you, and then you receive the $10,000 grant at the time of settlement. It gets paid into your bank account. So that's the easiest and the most efficient way of applying for the first homeowner grant. And as far as the stamp duty exemption or the first homeowner scheme is concerned, then your conveyancer or your solicitor will do that and sign you up for the application form at the time that they see you for the exchange of contracts. Can you think of any other commonly asked questions, T, that people have asked about these?
There's just some identification documents, so to be prepared for that, we need to have copies of your birth certificate, passport, driver's license to go with that. So if you have those already, because they will be required to process the application.
Yeah, so Scott and Talia, I noticed that one of the questions that came in was certainly there was the interest around the grants, which you just covered, but just the process itself. Where do I start when I'm looking for my first home? What are some of the tips or the things I should put in place when I start that journey?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I touched on the difficulties that first home buyers are experiencing at the moment, and I don't think this is ever going to change. Most first home buyers, and in fact most buyers of properties these days, will require some assistance from a bank, and therein lies the problem with first home buyers, because there's always a delay in waiting for your finance to be approved before you can actually exchange contracts. So I suppose my greatest advice these days for a purchaser or for a first purchaser would be to get as much of that work done as you can before you've actually got the contract, which is difficult. You can only go a certain way, but if a certain process. But if the bank's given you a pre-approval for a loan, then all they will need to make that loan formal is a valuation on the property, which won't take very long. So to reduce the time or the delay involved between seeing your property that you want to buy, agreeing on an amount that you want to pay for it, and then exchanging contracts, and to avoid being gazumped by another purchaser, then you need to make sure that you can reduce that delay as much as possible. Do you think anything else you can add to that, too?
Yeah, no, just being ready.
Yeah.
Give the bank all the documents they need so it's ready to go once you have it accepted.
And just explain to the viewers, as far as securing a property, legally securing a property, just explain to a first home buyer, what that means and what the process is.
Yep. So even though you've had your offer accepted and you may have paid a deposit, the property isn't secured until contracts are exchanged. And so that's the legal process of us dating and exchanging, swapping contracts with the purchaser and vendor. So up until that point, the property can be sold to anybody else.
So even if I paid my 10% deposit to the agent as a purchaser, and I'm waiting for the bank to give me my formal loan approval, that doesn't mean that I've secured the property, does it?
No, that's refundable up until exchange. Beyond exchange, no, but prior to exchange, it's just good faith.
Yeah. And can you just explain to first home purchasers, because I'm hearing this from them a lot at the moment, or what does the word gazumping mean?
It means that somebody else bought the property before you, so they've accepted 2 offers, and you've been beaten to the punch, basically.
Yeah, which is the unfortunate thing, is it's happening a lot. So if I'm a purchaser and I put my offer in and the vendors accept it, and then it's taking me a little while to get my formal loan approval, and the vendors accept a higher offer, or even an offer of the same as mine, but the second offerer can exchange contracts immediately, then if you put yourselves in the vendor's shoes, they really want to secure the sale as fast as they can, and you can't blame them really for taking either a higher offer or agreeing to exchange contracts quickly. So again, yeah, I can only emphasise it's very important to make sure that your ducks are in order as soon as you can. Any other questions?
Yeah, we've got one that's come in, and as a first home buyer, am I better off to buy at auction or make my own choice in looking around? Is there an advantage, or what's the difference?
What do you think?
Well, an auction, you're locked in at the auction. So again, you'd want to make sure you actually have finance approval and everything's ready to go. You might get a good deal at an auction, but I don't think there's any benefit over looking and buying one privately and negotiating.
I think it certainly puts a bit more pressure on a first home purchaser if you're not experienced an auction before and you're not prepared for an auction. It would be a little bit more difficult, shall we say, and probably a little bit more anxiety-ridden process. If you purchase it at an auction, it'll be a much easier ride, I would have thought, and probably a little bit less stressful if you were able to buy via private treaty. And these days, to tell you the truth, what we're finding with the market being so active is that properties are selling even before they're being listed on the market. So, whilst auctions are still a very popular way of selling properties, they're not lasting that long, and they're selling before the auction takes place.
So another one that's come in is that you mentioned about exchange to secure the property. What's the steps between there and when I get the keys to my property?
We liaise with your bank. They have to finalise mortgage documents, so they'll have those sent out to you and finalise those. And we open a PEXA workspace, which is the electronic platform for settling matters now. And then we just tick all the boxes, make sure we've got all the information we need from the vendor, get all your bank loan organised so that we've got funds ready, let you know if we need any further funds. We work out adjustments for council and water rates, and then we just go through and settle on PEXA.
It's a pretty painless system these days, thanks to our online settlement system. And between the two of us here, we like to keep, especially first home buyers, we like to keep you updated as much as we can, and make the process as painless as we can for you.
So another question is, how do I make sure that there's no hidden surprises in the property that I've exchanged on?
Well, we do that. That's what we call our due diligence, and what we do is both pre and after exchange of settlements is that if it's pre-exchange, we'll do will arrange a building and pest report for you, and that will disclose whether there's any obvious defects with the property. And then after exchange of contracts, that's when we do the rest of the due diligence, and that involves inquiries with the local council. It involves making a land tax inquiry to make sure that there's no outstanding land tax applicable on the property. So all of those inquiries are done after exchange of contracts, but before settlement, so that when it comes time to settlement, we can guarantee that there's no latent or apparent defects with the property or with the transfer of the title of the property.
And another one is, when do I become responsible for instance, insuring my property?
As of exchange, technically you have an interest. So we do recommend from exchange, and most banks will have a requirement as part of lending to you that you have insurance as part of the loan approval. So yeah, it can take effect from settlement, but it is recommended from the date of exchange.
Yeah, if you contact your insurance company once you've exchanged contracts and let them know that that's what you've done, and they'll, in most cases, ask you for a settlement date, and you would have the insurance, the house insurance, or if it's a unit, the contents insurance in place so that it would come into effect on the settlement date.
So other than the costs of the service, what are some of the other things that I could be responsible for outlaying in the purchase?
Well, you've got the other costs. If you aren't eligible for your first home scheme exemption from the stamp duty, then that's your next biggest cost is your stamp duty. But if we assume you haven't got to pay that, then you'll have your lawyers or your conveyancers fees, which would have been disclosed to you when you first spoke to them about your purchase. You've got your removalist fees, obviously, and then maybe the not so obvious costs for a first time purchaser would be things like, your water rates, your council rates, those sorts of costs which you would have incurred whether you've rented or bought a house before. So there's those costs. We've discussed the insurance costs before. Can you think of anything else that I've not covered?
Just the cost with moving. If you're renting, you've got to make sure that you're out of your rental, so you're not paying rent and a mortgage.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
And the last question that was indicated was, is there any major difference if I choose to buy a strata titled property, a unit?
All right. Well, the difference between the strata and a Torrens title, as far as your costs are concerned, is that there's still rates applicable. Many people assume that if you buy an strata unit, there's no rates. Well, there is rates. The only difference is that you're not paying when you buy a strata unit is you don't have to pay your own home insurance, because the strata insurance is included in your levies. So if you're buying a strata unit, you're still paying your rates, you're still paying your water rates, you're still paying your power, you're just not paying building insurance. As far as the costs are concerned, your legal costs will be fairly similar whether you're buying a house or a strata unit. The home contents insurance, as far as I'm concerned, are fairly similar as well. I don't think there's any other costs that will be majorly different from buying a real property, from buying a house.
And probably the last thing, and just looking to wrap up, would be, from your own experience, what do you consider all the things that you've spoken about today to be probably the one or two critical steps for a first homeowner in looking for their first home?
Just be prepared. So have everything ready that you need to have ready for grants or who you're using. just so that everybody can have everything ready to go when you find that property, so that you're not wasting time.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think also it's much easier these days than it's ever been before for buyers to do their own homework and their own background checks and have a really good look before you commit to anything. I'm finding more and more these days that buyers will have been looking at the property market sometimes for months before they make a decision to buy something, and they will know the market pretty well, and it's not difficult to see what's selling and what's not selling. So spend some time doing your research on properties, what they're selling for, whereabouts they're selling for, for more or less, and as Talia said, do your homework, and so when it comes time to put the offer forward, you've done as much as you can to make it as to cut down the delay, so you avoid being gazumped. Okay, I think there's nothing else that we can cover, so if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to contact either of us here, and if you are a first-time buyer and you're looking, good luck, and we look forward to being able to assist you in the near future. Good afternoon.